Today we're talking to Jess of Alzheimer's Awakening, who is a long distance caregiver for her mom, Patty.
My name is Jessica Smith. I am a caregiver for my mom, Patty. I am her long distance care partner and advocate, along with my stepdad. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's back in 2014. It took some time to get her to go to the doctor and to actually eventually get that diagnosis. But since then, I really decided to just go all in and show up for my mom in every single way possible. Um, Throughout the years, over the years, I had lived in Florida, where my mom lives, and in 2017, I moved to North Carolina with her blessing. That was a huge part of why I moved. My mom really encouraged me to move and be with the love of my life, Ken, and so I did. Um, and she was pretty okay at that time. But now as the disease has progressed, it's definitely made things a little bit more difficult. I have to, visit her much more often. I'm seeing her probably every 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, and, whether that's in Florida or in North Carolina, but, going forward, more than likely, it's going to be in Florida because, unfortunately, this disease just really affects every inch of my mom's life and ability to do things, so that's kind of a snippet of our caregiving journey up until this point.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I mean, it sounds like a lot of travel and just logistics, in addition to everyday stuff. Um, you mentioned and I know you share pretty openly about this, but that it took a while to get a diagnosis. She
Mhm.
was, I'm not sure. Can you just tell us more about that experience? What was it like for her? What was it like for you
Sure.
guys?
Yeah, glad to share. So in the beginning, we noticed some things with mom, just like every other story with Alzheimer's. You just start to notice things are off in different ways. For my mom, um, one of the primary things that I noticed was her inability to keep her linen closet straight. Now, my mom's linen closet, she would brag about this linen closet and look at how I have all of my, decorative towels organized by the holiday. So the next holiday is on top and then you put it on the bottom when when it's over. And because my mom is just really proud of the things that she owned because we grew up very lower middle class and she didn't have a lot of things. So as she got them, she got very excited about them. So I did notice that was probably the first huge sign is I opened that linen closet on a visit to Florida and it was in disarray. And honestly, that made my heart drop. So I immediately talked to my mom and my stepdad about going to the doctor and just talking about what was going on. And honestly, I had no idea about anything neurological at that point in my life. No one in our family had this disease or anything like it. So we ended up having to have several family interventions and to get my mom on board with even going to the doctor. And I can understand looking back. I mean, this has to be one of the scariest things that could ever happen is to know that your ability to think on your own is going to begin to fade away. But she just would not listen to us. And my mom is a very strong-willed woman and she just thought she knew best and she would be fine. um, it was probably the 3rd family meeting that we had about it, that she finally agreed, but we had to quite frankly, like, threaten to not be as present in her life and things like that, cards that nobody wants to play, you know. Maybe some people wanna say that to their parents, but I didn't wanna say that to my mom, and so that was really difficult, but I'm glad she finally listened. When they went to the doctor, she did get the diagnosis and she threatened my stepdad to not tell us. She said, I don't want my family to know. So I'm sharing all of this in candor because I believe it's really important to know that this is very common. I get questions and stories like this all the time sent into my mom's Instagram page because it's hard for anyone to deal with this. So that's how the initial diagnosis unfolded with a lot of urging and concern from all of us. It's myself and I have 2 younger sisters, And my dad was also involved. Both of my parents were married for about 25 years. And so they had a long history, and my dad was very, he is very still present in her life, and with my stepdad as well. So he was also involved in helping us get that diagnosis for her.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you sharing it in candor for this exact reason. I think,
Mhm.
um, it's scary, especially at the beginning to, navigate this and understand it. And it's also
Mhm.
awesome that, there's so many people involved in your mom's care and part of
Yeah.
this ecosystem. Um, we can move on from this in a second, but early on when you were trying to get a diagnosis and your mom was like, "Don't tell the kids," and,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
you were talking to your stepdad, you guys weren't in the same place necessarily, like, how are those conversations like? Like, how did you bridge this? How was your stepdad, being respectful of your mom, but also being transparent with you? Just what was these conversations, what were they like?
Very uncomfortable. And, I still lived in Florida at that time. My family lives in Northeast Florida. I was in Central Florida in Orlando, and so it was only about a 3-hour drive, so I would go up there often. But the initial reaction from my stepdad is he knew he needed to tell us. So he did end up confiding in me. And then, honestly, from there, I was just all about facing it, and I was both myself and my sisters, we just wanted to face this head on. So it was very uncomfortable. He didn't want to, make my mom distrust love him. Quite frankly, I think he was a little nervous around my mom since my mom was so headstrong. I mean, sincerely, I think he was just a little bit, scared of her. What is she going to do? But, over time and many talks, I think my mom finally came around to the fact that this is happening. However, my mom did not take medicine at first. She did refuse taking medicine, and I'm not sure if that's another common thing, but, so even though we knew the diagnosis was there, everybody in the family was actually aware, the next step was getting help and therapy, and she was just not about that at all. In fact, unfortunately, some behaviors got worse. She started drinking a little bit more to self-medicate, which I can understand that is probably a common factor too. People just trying to disassociate. We as human just do that. But so we did notice some behaviors that were actually making the disease much, much worse. So it was a difficult time at the beginning. And honestly, that was probably one of the most difficult parts of the journey. And something that I learned recently is that denial is actually a symptom of Alzheimer's that happens in the beginning. I cannot think of the word, it begins with an A, but that is actually a symptom. So I don't know if it was my mom consciously, denying this, or was it, Alzheimer's, masking it. It's such a complex disease.
Yeah, that's so interesting and maybe a
Mhm.
question that, can't be answered, but that's an interesting observation about your mom's early
Mhm.
experience.
Yeah.
Um, so you have 2 sisters, you have Ken, you have your stepdad, your dad, like, there's a lot of
Yes,
people involved.
definitely.
How do you guys and now you're not in Florida, you obviously,
Mhm.
you're traveling and there a lot, but how do you guys coordinate care? Like, how frequently do you talk? What kind of systems do you use? Like, how are you coordinating care between all of you?
So, we pretty much figured out what our strong suits are. So, I am the emotional one. So, I am the sister that shows up in physical ways. I am the one that speak to her and my stepdad every single day. I always do a quick check-in call just to make sure everyone's okay. My younger sister, Angela, she is very data driven. She's very logistical. She's very, financially responsible. And she has the power of attorney. She helped with their finances at the very beginning of all of this. And still is that advocate for financial and other things that are kind of out of my purview at the moment. And I show up when it comes to, visits and bathing and things that are very literally hands-on. Um, and my dad actually is the one who is contributing financially to the family for, and supplementing some of my mom's care. And, we may get to this in a minute, but I just, I think it's so beautiful that my family could come together in this way where, my dad could ask my stepdad, "Is this something that I can help you with?" in a very respectful and loving way. And my stepdad accepted. So I'm sure, there's some sense of, am I enough? Why does this other person need to help? But I'm glad that ego kind of fell away and, everyone was able to pitch in the way that they did. So, when it comes to the day to day caring of my mom, it's definitely myself and my stepdad that are most involved, hands down. But we couldn't do what we do without the support of the rest of the family.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I'm glad you guys have all sort of discovered your strong suits, and what you just shared about
Mhm.
your dad, excuse me, contributing financially, is really beautiful and nice. I don't know, nice that you guys are still able to maintain a relationship in this way, that you guys, like the whole family. Um,
Absolutely.
I'd love to know more about what it's like for you to be a long distance caregiver, like just what your experience is like there. And then I'd also love to talk about, how you're funding your mom's care. You just mentioned your dad's contributing, um, what's happening with insurance or Medicare or, out of pocket costs. Just what's that look like for you guys?
Sure. So yeah, so they have their insurance, they have Medicare. My dad is supplementing the in-home caregiver that comes 5 days a week for 4 hours a day, so that's his financial contribution. Um, the finances, as you're very familiar with, are a huge hardship for most people, even if you are like well off, you have to literally be rich in order to pay for your own care the way that we all deserve. I mean, rich, our system is not set up to make it easy for anyone to get the support and end of life care that we all deserve, or care through disease that we all deserve. So they have these normal channels. My mom and my stepdad have gone through their 401ks. They've gone through other savings that they've had. They're able to maintain the day to day, but when the time comes that my mom does need to go into a home full time, if that's the route we go, um, they're going to have to sell their house in order to do that, and we've already started that process just to get things moving. But my stepdad is very resistant to moving. One way that we would like to help financially is to have my mom and my stepdad move in with us to our home. We bought a home. Ken and I bought a home with the premise that they would live with us, and that's what we were hoping for. But he has been so resistant to that change. Quite frankly, I'm just hoping that something happens internally with him, like that he realizes, like, I cannot do this on my own anymore, so that we can help them financially with those costs as well. Because I can't have my stepdad spending all of their resources on my mom, because then what's going to happen to him? My stepdad's 75, and while he's in relatively good health right now, we all live in bodies and they age and die. That's going to happen to all of us. So I want him to have some sort of savings or finances that he can fall back on too. Um, but it's just the way that our system is set up. It's just so difficult to be able to do that. So that's sort of what the finances are looking like right now. They are all over the place. We are starting to get to a point with my mom. I realized after this last time with her that something is going to happen, and some major change is going to have to occur, because financially we're not going to be able to support her just in the home for much longer. Her mobility is starting to change. She may be, wheelchair bound at some point towards the end of this year. I'm not sure, but we're going to have many more costs associated to this disease, and quite frankly, I don't feel like our family is really ready. I've been trying to get us ready. My sister, Angela, has also been trying to get us ready, but when you have different people in the mix that are sort of resistant, like my stepdad right now, I love him. He is doing so much good for my mom and our family, but there is just resistance to change there. that is going to have implications financially for our family in the coming years for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to think about. And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess 2 questions. One is, have you talked to your stepdad about what he's thinking about for himself later? Because it sounds like obviously, everything's going into your mom right now. So what happens
Mhm.
next for him? And then my other question is you talked about, trying to get your family ready for upcoming expenses with your mom or say your stepdad's, next chapter after this. What do you mean by getting your family ready? Like, has this been just conversations about money, or is this like,
Mhm.
actual, I don't know, meeting? What does that look like for you guys?
So right now, just conversations, sounding the alarm. Um, like many people, my stepdad, it's having a difficult time planning or even just wrapping his head around end of life. And I think this is another reason why I'm going into the death doula field because I want to help people get prepared for end of life so we can get that weight off our shoulders and just live while we can live. And unfortunately, he's just having a really difficult time with that piece of it. So, if I ask him what he wants for himself, he just has a very difficult time even envisioning himself sick or that something could happen to him. Um, so quite frankly, he's not really doing much planning right now. Um, he can't even admit that something will happen to his body at some point, So which I understand because there's so much fear around that. But so that's what I mean. I'm just trying to sound the alarm like, "Hey, this is gonna happen to all of us. So let's get ready." And I know for myself, it's made me really, really think about saving for myself and for the years to come, so that I'm comfortable and so that I can get what I want. Ken and I don't have children, and while your children are not expected to care for you, I'm sharing that because we don't have someone as like a default caregiver or someone that will show up for us. Um, so yeah, we're gonna have to carry that weight on our own, and that's fine. But this situation is showing me I need to continue to prepare now in my 40s so that when I am in my 60s, 70s, 80s, I am set up with that cushion so that I don't have to stress like right now. Because unfortunately, what I think may happen is we may have to sell their house in a rush. I feel like, something may occur that shifts everything and we have to make these changes. Whereas I feel like it would be better to be able to slowly begin to plan. Ideally, I would love for my stepdad to go visit, different assisted living places for himself, just to see what he likes. Not only for the financial reasons, but for just to take it off of the family's concern or worries. So yeah, I honestly like I don't know what's going to happen next financially and it's pretty scary. I mean, I know that we will pull together as a family and do whatever we need to do, but yeah, this is a big concern and I'm sure for most Americans this is a huge issue and huge concern and I mean, I'm lucky for myself and for Ken to have 401ks and other investments and whatnot that I have slowly started to build. But, for a lot of people, there's no space to save at all. There's none of that. Um, yeah, I could just ramble on about this. I have so much compassion for everyone in this situation because it can be really heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, it really can. And that's sort of what we're trying to do here is, shed some light on it and hopefully give people tools and resources to manage it because it is very overwhelming. And I guess like your stepdad, I think sort of a default is to just be like just one foot in front of the other. I can't think too far
Yes.
in the future. Um,
And especially for him as he's caregiving and on this caregiving journey, like I can understand and I have so much compassion for him knowing that, day to day, all he's doing is thinking about my mom. I think it's almost impossible for him to think about himself. But had they done this years ago, you know, that would have been ideal for the family. Had we even started to plan to see where the financial shortcomings would be, where those holes would be, I would prefer that to just kind of floating, because now he's in this space where he doesn't have the energy to think about anything, you know? And as a 75-year-old, he has the energy to make it through every day that he is with my mom, and then that's about it, you know?
Yeah, what you're saying, I mean, I recognize the same in my dad. I think he, took care of my mom. He was her primary caregiver for so long, and it was just like holding on and just doing each
Yeah.
day. Um, and it's been our whole family's been on a journey since after my mom's passing. y- to you like lose a sense of purpose. You haven't made any plans, so I hear you on
Yeah.
really trying to sound the alarm for your family. You started to talk a little bit about thinking about your own
Mhm.
future care. I guess I'm curious, like, in what other ways has this caregiving journey impacted your thoughts on like spending and saving and just general thoughts of the future for you and Ken?
So, it's just made me realize, like, for deepen my realization of the capitalistic nature of our society, you know? I mean, really, and I hate that, honestly. I'm such a hippie. I would rather all just live on a barter system, or do something where it's just more beneficial for everyone, quite frankly, but that's just not the society we live in, right? So yeah, in terms of savings, I've maxed out my 401k contributions, things of that nature for sure. I will get a small inheritance when my dad does pass away. I've My resolve with that is to invest it in such a way that that is my nest egg for my elder years. I'm lucky and blessed enough to even know that that's coming. My dad worked his butt off his entire life for that, and I wanna use it in a way to just honor this situation. I feel like me having putting more care and time and savings into my own future is a way that I can honor my mom's maybe shortcomings with her own. Um, so yeah, so just saving, maxing out all of my benefits, through my employer, and, yeah, and just, like, my overall thoughts on aging, it's changed my it's just made me realize how the transitory nature of life, and just it's meant to be enjoyed, and to really realize, like, it's gonna be gone in a blink of an eye. Like, I can't even believe it's April already, you know? I mean, how did that happen, you know? I mean, I was listening to one of my, meditation teachers the other day, and he was talking about his 70-year-old friend told him that he eats breakfast every 15 minutes because, like, that's how fast time seems to go, you know? And so that's something that my mom has taught me. It's like here and gone in a split second, so I'm really grateful that she's shown me that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Mhm,
You've talked a little bit about, how you're thinking about saving and financial planning for the future. Is that something that
mhm.
I'm just curious, had thought about previously? Like, was this, talked to you by your parents or wherever, or was this something that you started thinking about, when your mom got sick and as you started looking to the future that way?
So I've had a very uncomfortable relationship with money most of my life, and we need to teach it in school. Like, this needs to be something that kids start learning about in middle school and high school. Because my college years, I got that Sears credit card on my college campus when I was 18. I maxed it out on like raver jeans and things that I didn't need back in the day, and my credit went down the tubes, and then, I had financial loans to pay back from school, and I was just very scared of money for a very long time. It wasn't until my early 30s that I really started to be like, "Okay, this is just money. And so I just need to work with it and figure out how to get my stuff in order." And I did. And I built my credit score back up. I wasn't thinking about planning for end of life at that point in time, but I knew that I needed to just fix my relationship with money in order to just live life. And so I started to increase my credit score slowly but surely, and I still can't believe, it was good enough to buy a house and things like that. Like, I really turned it around. I'm very proud of myself because that was like a huge hurdle to get over. And I was, like, ashamed of it, and then I was also, I don't know, I felt like it was only happening to me, but, like, the more I've talked to friends about it, so many people are like, "Oh, yeah, it scares the hell out of me too," and I believe it's something that many of us are facing because we do not get the support in grade school and high school to and the tools to learn how to manage our money or work with money and how to then plan and move forward. I remember my first job in my early 20s, my first really good job after college. I wasn't contributing to my 401k, and my boss told me, she was like, "What are you doing? This is my match is free money to you." And back then I didn't understand. I was busy maxing out my credit card on jeans. Like I didn't know. But now I get it. So, now I've moved from my 6% match with which my company offers, which is very generous, to I contribute 10. And so 10% and they match the 6. So now I'm like, going above and beyond, which recently I found out may not be the best thing to do. I'll get yeah. Anyway, but I did increase my savings. So I'll give it that. But yeah, my mom's journey definitely reinforced what I started to learn in my 30s was that, I need to save in order to want to live the life that I want to live in my later years. I do not want to be, struggling in my after I retire, and so many Americans, that's what they're doing. They're struggling. I don't mind continuing to work because I want to continue to have that drive and sense of purpose in some degree, maybe not full time or something, but we shouldn't have to have 80-year-olds, bagging at Walmart just in order to pay for their food. I mean, we our elders in society deserve more dignity and respect than we give them. And but yeah, so I'm glad I'm on the other side of my fear with money. Thank goodness, but it took me a while to get there. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you sharing all that. I think money is so highly emotional. You mentioned fear, but I think there's, lots of different emotional sort of cores to how we to our relationship with money.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
I want to bring us back a little bit. So
Sure.
you talked about how you're funding your mom's care or how the whole family is sort of, approaching this. I know your sister has POA and your stepdad is
Mhm.
there. If you have the insight, can you talk a little bit about how you guys are managing the money? Like what systems are you using? What's working well? What could be even better to actually manage all these different income sources and bills, et cetera?
So unfortunately right now, my it's only my stepdad that's doing the managing. And the only reason I say unfortunately is because, I would just like the peace of mind to know that like how it's being managed only because um decisions that they make now will affect us and how we caregive for them in the future. And I understand privacy, so I definitely don't badger him about this. And I do get small glimpses. Um but I don't have like full view. My sister does manage one of their 401ks, my mom's 401k, and some other finances from my mom's side. So, we will have to go through her in order to deduct some of those funds, but when it comes to like the day to day, we don't have a huge understanding of what's going on. Thankfully, things like their house and car are paid off, so that's great. So they're not making those payments, but I worry about things like scams with my stepdad, not no diss to him. I just mean like it is so prevalent to have people calling the house or even when he goes to take his car in, he will do all the things and which again, like, it's their money, it's their decision, but it is hard when you're in this co-caregiving role to not have the full picture, but still have to show up and help based on the decisions that they make, or that he makes. Um, so that's something that will probably change with time, hopefully, he allows us to be a little bit more involved, but right now, I don't have a huge look into what that looks like right now. Yeah.
Yeah, some of these scams out here are getting advanced too. I found myself a couple times. I shop like Facebook Marketplace and stuff, and
Mhm.
people are tricky out there. Like I really have to scan still, and I'm like pretty smart and aware of scams. So
Mhm.
I think about this, yeah, with my dad also, who's a
Mhm.
smart man. He's got his brain, but still, I'm
Exactly.
like, what's happening out there?
Well, me
Yeah.
too. I will totally admit this. I actually just fell for a scam
Well, no,
because
yeah,
it was a phishing scam. It was an inbound call from my bank. I didn't lose any money.
yeah.
But the scams are so realistic now that the caller IDs can look just like the institution. That said my bank name. It was my bank telephone number. Um, when they called, I was sort of in the middle of like a work emergency while I was traveling, so I was a little off. They just caught me at that right moment where I wasn't second guessing everything, and I fell for it. They got into my bank account. They stole or they took several $100s. And then again, they took $700 a couple of days later, and all under the guise that they were calling me because of suspicious activity on my bank account. It was so real, like yeah, so, I mean, I don't even worry about it just for them, I worry about it for us too because I honestly we've had people text us saying that they're our CEO and the number looks just like it's her number, it says, her name and everything, and yeah, it's intense out there.
It is intense out there. Thanks for sharing
Mhm,
that. Yeah, I think it's a
yeah,
concern of all of
no
ours.
problem. Yeah.
Um, I guess I'm hoping you can like hypothesize with me a little bit, but like if
Sure.
there was a system or a method, like what would in your ideal world to have like greater transparency and visibility into sort of like the day-to-day finances in your ideal world, where everyone's comfortable with everything, what would that look like by way of, how you communicate that or how you're able to see this kind of information so that it can inform decisions that you and Ken make or you and your
Mhm,
sisters make when you step
mhm.
into care?
Yeah, I think just seeing or getting a better idea of the daily spending patterns and whatnot. I'm not given any indication that, my stepdad is doing anything like wrong or irresponsible with the money right now. I'm not seeing things like he's buying bulk vitamins that he'll never use or things like that. That I have read things about folks just like wanting to spend in later years. So I don't see anything like that. I just would love some sort of way to maybe glance at his ledger every so often just to see if anything looks out of the ordinary or just to see if there's some weird scammy charge on there from maybe someplace he accidentally clicked online or something like that. So some sort of transparency, like visibility in their bank account. But, as I say these words, I can understand how difficult that would be to have someone else, especially someone who, I'm 45, he probably still sees me as a little kid. I can understand how difficult that is, and so I don't know if that would even be the right answer. But I guess if there was some way that I could just see their daily spending habits or his daily spending habits to understand and make sure he's getting like the best deals and things like that. Because not that I don't trust him, but he doesn't necessarily know some of the resources online that maybe we know, and he's not as familiar with search price shopping online, or he'll for instance, if someone comes by and asks if he can cut their grass, he's such a kind gentleman. He'll, often say, sure, whatever. But, they might be charging $300 more than maybe another company in town. And at this time when they need to really be saving money for the future, those are some of the type of spending things that I would just like to better see. Um, but again, it's like I understand the whole control aspect because, I'm over here spouting out, let's have more respect and dignity for elders, but like, what? So now I'm just gonna like look at their checkbook too? I don't know. It's such a fine line, you know what I mean? Because he's well, like he's okay. So this is I'm understanding more of the complexities as I share this information with you because it is so intense in terms of, yes, I want to be able to look at their finances, but how will that make him feel, you know?
Something we're working on here. It doesn't exist yet. Well, half of this exists. Uh, Givers offers a Givers debit card. It's a self-funded debit card where you can put all of your caregiving expenses. We're about to launch an app where
Oh,
you can,
cool.
uh, you don't have to, but you can link that and it'll help categorize sort of your care spending. Something that we're talking about for the future is sort of what you've just talked about is like, how can you invite someone into your apps.
Mhm,
You and your
mhm,
sisters and Ken and
mhm,
your stepdad and dad, whoever, could all be sort of in the same space. So it's not
mhm.
necessarily looking at their, bank statement, but it could be useful if you guys put all of your care expenses on the giver's debit card uh, to see care
Yeah.
expenses there. So maybe it's not
Mhm.
how much they spent on lawn care, but it might be useful to see how much they spent on doctor's appointments or,
Yes. Yeah,
whichever
yeah.
that month. So
I
I do
like
think
that idea.
yeah, I think it's a pain point that you've just described that other people have also is,
Mhm,
there's many people involved, many people are long distance caregivers, people have different
mhm,
roles here. You've described a very respectful relationship with your family. There's no issues of, like misspending or misappropriating
mhm.
funds or this sort of thing, but that's also a common problem that people experience. So, we're looking at how to, hopefully make that a little bit easier for people to navigate also. Um, so anyway, just share that. Go
No,
to
that's
Plug
great.
City a little bit
Great.
about what Givers is up to. But
No, that's awesome.
I think it's also interesting to hear from people what is or isn't working right now,
Mhm.
by way of their systems for managing caregiving expenses. Someone else out there might have a solution for you, or things
Yeah.
that you've shared might also be helpful to people as they figure out how to navigate, the cost of caregiving.
Mhm.
Um, to change the topic a little bit, something that really stands out to me talking to you and also just watching, your family's journey online is like an overwhelming sense of positivity and that being infused into like day to day and just how you seem to live your life. I'd love if you could just talk a little bit more about this and where it comes from and how it's impacted your caregiving journey and how you maintain it, through what can be a really hard experience.
Thank you, first of all. It's really kind of you. When I was a kid, people used to call me Joyful Jessica and things like that. So it's definitely a trait that's been with me since birth. And I'm so grateful for it because I want to help bring joy to everyone's life in some capacity. And that's another reason why I'm going into the death field to bring joy to death as well. Um, in my earlier years, like maybe teenager, early 20s, I definitely had bouts with toxic positivity. So I would say that is definitely the flip side of this trait of mine, um, where I thought everyone needed to be positive all the time. Yeah, it's just not like that, you know? So I think getting over that and understanding that really helped me navigate my mom's journey because I turned, you know, positivity all the time, more into acceptance and contentment with whatever is happening. So, my joy does come through a lot, but there is more of a sense of just contentment in every passing moment. I use the phrase be here now a lot because I like to be present and just with whatever is happening in any given moment. And that sort of contentment and joy is something that really has allowed me to show up for my mom the way that I have. Um, there are so many times with my mom that I am not feeling joy and I am, overwhelmed by sadness and grief. But I have noticed that it's even in those moments of extreme grief or sadness, that acceptance kind of brings me back to joy. It's a weird kind of Venn diagram or diagram, but I go from, sadness to then happiness because I'm accepting my feelings and not tucking them away to show up as future disease in my body. And I think that's really something that is important for all of us is to really just instead of rejecting what's right in front of us, to take actionable steps and find ways to be content in our reality instead of trying to pull away from it. And that's something that has really been important to me to do through this journey with Alzheimer's, and to just make sure that we find ways to laugh in between all of these, really uncomfortable and horrible moments. So, like, for instance, my mom may have a rough go in the restroom, let's just say. And, she and I might laugh about it. And I may make a joke about it with her, and we'll laugh together at a really like uncomfortable, not so pleasant situation. And, same with Ken. If I'm having a rough go at it, he'll just joke around with me about something. If my mom's feeling down, we'll pull out like the Mr. Bill doll that says, "Oh no," from Saturday Night Live, and she'll start cracking up. So we just try to find ways and tools to just not get bogged down in the stuff that sucks. But instead to just find contentment. This is what's happening. Here we are now. And, another piece of that is to just realize that everything is temporary. And that lesson of impermanence has been probably the best lesson, biggest lesson of my life, is to realize that the hard times, those moments that are really horrible and sad. My mom had really horrible hallucinations last Thursday when I was driving with her for 8 hours. I had to just keep reminding myself, this is temporary. This is temporary. This is temporary. So it helps me get through those moments. But last Wednesday, my mom was serenading me to an Elton John song, and I was saying the same mantra in my head, "This is temporary." And it just made me like really envelop that joy and that love in the moment as she was mimicking the words to that song for me. So while I think my journey with joy has been, kind of finding my way and not like having the fake joy, I'm really grateful for this trait that I got via my mom. So
Yeah, I love that, and thank you for sharing, both of those examples of driving with your mom and, her experiencing intense hallucinations and that being, sometimes in those moments, you're like, "This is impossible, I can't handle this is gonna last forever." So that's a good reminder, but also coupling that with, like, being really present in the moments that are good also, um, and getting to experience them because they are also temporary.
definitely. And
Um
I think something with that is that, those moments that feel so intense and we feel like they're never going to end. Something that Alzheimer's has taught me is that you miss it. So, like, my mom used to tell this story all the time about her Uncle Libby, who owned Double Rock Park, and my neighborhood, both my neighborhoods that she has visited, looks just like it. And she would talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. I mean, I've heard this story like 6,000 times. She doesn't say it anymore. And I miss it. And like, that it's hard, but I mean, that's something you just start to see. You miss the behaviors that used to annoy the snot out of you. And now you're like, wow. And it makes you realize, like, one day I will miss that time in the car with my mom. And, so I just enjoy it now. I enjoy it while I have it, or at least if I can't enjoy it, I just find that contentment in it. Mhm.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. To wrap up our conversation, I'd love to know, what do you know now that you wish you knew at the beginning of your caregiving journey experience?
To take better care of myself. Um, like my mom, have a tendency to put everyone else ahead of myself. And that's something that I have slowly understood over the past almost 10 years, is that if I can't take care of myself, I can't take care of anyone else. So, every day that I'm with my mom and I'm serving as her primary caregiver, I make sure that I take at least 2 to 5 minutes to sit and be quiet and still and meditate, or just be still, for my own well-being. I also, realize in that self-care, it's that sometimes I can say no to certain things, whether that's like me trying to plan something for my mom that's like causing me a great amount of stress. Like it's okay to deny that, it's okay to say no. Um, I definitely put way too much pressure on myself from 2014 to 2021. And I'm realizing now that I have the same ability to stress myself out just like my mom did by taking on everybody else's stuff, and I'm starting to analyze now that I think her stress was one of the reasons why she ended up with Alzheimer's, because she wasn't taking care of myself. And sometimes I started to catch myself in those moments and realize, like, if I don't take care of myself, I could make myself sick. And so now I'm super aware of that, and I take better care of myself mentally and physically. And I do things, for instance, when I took her to Florida on Thursday, I came home on Friday and I was planning to stay for a couple of days, but I needed to do it for myself. And like thinking about that, like I know my mom would be proud of me for doing that, whereas maybe a couple of years ago, maybe a couple of years ago, I would have just pushed through that and just done it. And I think all caregivers, no matter where you are in the caregiving journey, if you're primary, long distance, whatever, we all need to take better care of ourselves, you know? So that's something that I've learned for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that and for being so, vulnerable in this whole conversation. I think all of this has been really valuable, and it's I think helpful for people to get an insight into what, your experience has been like. If people want to find you online and follow along you and your mom and your whole family's story, where can they find you?
Sure. On Instagram, we're at Alzheimer's_awakening. That's our only social media channel right now. I started that page just as a journal for myself, and it's gained traction from there. But in the coming year or so, I'll be putting out some information about my death doula services, and I'm also in the process of getting my certified dementia practitioner badge certification so that I can assist other families through this dementia journey as well. So when they're out there, it'll be linked to my Instagram page.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll be sure to tag your Instagram page here. And, as you put this information out, we'd love if you, stayed in touch so we can share it and link it to this conversation, etc.